Okay, we are going to get started. Welcome, 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 everyone. I'm going to just get started right away because we have some stuff to get through, and I'm so excited to share this with you all and talk about self-care today. Um, so again, my name is LaNeisha Murphy. Well, maybe not again. You can see it on my chat, but my name is LaNeisha, and I am going to be your guide through this journey today, um, which I find super important and really excited to talk about because as maybe some of you have also been on my own self-care journey lately. And it's just really an important topic. And I think that's so salient to where we are today as a society, as women, especially as women of color. So hopefully today you will learn something new and enjoy this practice and this time we're spending together. So today we're talking about self-care, right? Self-care isn't selfish, how to actively engage in the preservation of you. And so my name is LaNeisha Murphy. I am a health and wellness counselor here at the University of Michigan School of Medicine in the Office of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies. So just a little bit about me. Again, I'm a health and wellness counselor here at OGPS. I've been here at the university for a little over 2 years, but have spent over the last decade providing mental health counseling services to adults, children, families, adolescents in Michigan. I'm also an approved clinical supervisor, so I help folks get their full license in counseling as well as supervise interns on their journey to becoming counselors. So some of my areas of expertise: trauma, grief, anxiety, and systems. So whether that be a person in their family, in their work environment, and all of those different places, the systems in which they work and how that affect them, their mental health and wellness. Some would call me a jack of all trades, a master of a few as well. As Michigan is one of those really interesting states. I'm originally from California, and I found myself having a lot of opportunities for careers since I've been here. And so I dabbled a little bit in teaching, in nonprofit and grant writing and things like that. So it's been an interesting journey. I currently am working on my PhD in counselor education and supervision. I'm really excited about that. And I'm raising a teenager, which we all know can be quite the harrowing experience. And I have to frequently engage in self-care because of those things. So as we go on this journey today, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. I will get to those as I am able, and there will definitely be a time at the end of our time together for questions and answers. So please feel free to throw those in the chat, and we'll get to those at the end. So today we're going to talk about the history of self-care, the dimensions of self-care and what you can do to engage in those. Again, some time for questions, and then we're going to have a little practice at the end of one way to engage in the practice of self-care. So, a brief history.
Anyone who's interested in making change in the world also has to learn how to take care of herself, himself, their selves.
So for those of you who don't know, that was Angela Davis, who is thankfully still with us. And she was a member of the Black Panther Party in the 1970s. And so one of the ways actually that self-care has come about was in part by the Black Panther Party and their movement. So the term self-care was actually first coined by the medical profession in the 50s. And so it really focused on what can patients do to take care of themselves so that they don't get sick again or that their illnesses don't get worse. So it really didn't have to do with the holistic approach sort of that we know today of what self-care is. So, but the term, again, self-care was made popular by the Black Panther Party in the 70s. And so this was not something that was a part of luxury, right? It wasn't really a sense to just relax, relate, release, right? It was actually about empowerment. And so Angela Davis and one of the other members, two Black women in the Black Panther Party, really started engaging in self-care while they were incarcerated. And so they started looking at things like meditation and yoga and really focusing on what they eat and put into their bodies in an attempt to take care of themselves and to be able to continue the fight for civil rights for Black people. So this embraced the physical, the mental, as well as the spiritual parts of us as human beings. And so Angela Davis said, if we don't start practicing collective self-care now, there's no way to imagine, much less reach, a time of freedom. And so self-care was a radical concept. This was something that it didn't take other people. It was something that the privileged could not take away, because it was something that people did for themselves. And then it was a way to, again, keep that movement of civil rights and empowerment strong for the Black community. And then, as we know today, it's really broadened to care for everyone. So there are 8 main dimensions of self-care, and you'll see this in the different literature. Some say 5, 6, 7. I like to look at these 8, and these are the ones that we are going to focus on today. So we're going to look at physical, intellectual, professional, spiritual, social, financial, environmental, and finally emotional self-care. That's probably the one that most people are really aware of. So looking at physical self-care first, we know that we have to take care of our bodies, and because it's vital for long-term health and wellness, quality of life. And so what we do know from the research is women of color suffer disproportionately from a lack of physical care for themselves. And so we can look at that in terms of the healthcare disparities, where there's a higher, infant mortality rate and pregnancy death rate in women of color, especially Black women. Looking at access to medical care, we simply either we have less access than other people as women of color to adequate healthcare. And so looking at those things that really help to manage our physical well-being and wellness. And we also have to look at safety, right? Safety is also a part of that physical care environment. How safe do you feel in your environment? Where can you go? Where can you not go? And what that does to your sense of being. So the things that we can do to enhance and maintain that physical care is, seek regular physical health and physical wellness appointments, right? Go see your primary doctor. And if you don't have one, go get one. One of the things that we tend to do as women is we put everybody above ourselves, and we wait and wait and wait. And then we end up having this bigger problem and this bigger issue. So a lot of times, if we can catch things on the front end, when they're not so serious, we can really have greater longevity and have greater physical self-care. You also have to advocate with your providers, because a lot of times we're not listened to as women. We're told our pain isn't as painful. We're told that maybe we're making things up in our head, or that's not really what the problem is. And so if you don't have providers that will listen to you, you find one that will. I've even had experiences with going to get medical tests, and I know I'm supposed to get one test, and they say, oh, no, you don't need that one. And I'm like, but this is what my order says, and I'm, in that middle age. And so I'm finally coming into myself, as a woman. And it's really important to stand up and to advocate for yourself, because if I didn't have that test, something could have been missed, and I could have had a bigger physical health problem down the line later. The other thing I always like to say is eat well, not easy. And so it's so easy to go and, pick up something that maybe in the moment makes you feel good, but after the fact is like, oh, why did I eat that? And so even the process of, making a good meal, or, going to pick out ingredients and those types of things can really be a fun, caring experience for yourself. And so it is important that you do physically take care of your body by putting good things into it. And we know with the prices of things, it gets really expensive. And so seasonal and sales, I always tell people. And finally, move purposefully. So, most of us have these wonderful little, you know, activity trackers on our wrists, or apps on our phones. And so we're like, how many minutes did we get in? How many calories did we burn? How much did our heart rate get up to? And so we have to figure, is it really about that? Or is it about making our body feel well and feel better? And so if we can shift that focus from either checking a box or hitting a certain level to how does my body feel, right? What type of work does my body want to do today? Do I want to walk? Do I want to yoga? Do I want to lift heavy? Do I want to dance? And so figuring out where you are and what works for you in terms of your physical health is so important. And it's such a good way of really diving into this whole aspect of self-care. So, intellectual self-care, it's not something that we frequently think about. And I really love the concept of intellectual self-care. And here it says this type of self-care refers to the pursuit of engaging in activities that nourish and challenge the mind. It addresses your inner thinker and actively expands your knowledge, mindset, and self-awareness. Again, we get busy, right? Some of us used to be avid readers in our youth. And now today we're like, I barely have time to read a label. I barely have time to read an email. I barely have time for this. But even if you just take a few moments every day to nourish your intellect, it is something that is so vital for self-care. And so what you can do, you can read, right? Read anything, read something interesting, read something you don't know about, reread a treasured, cherished book. But, read to gain essential knowledge, right? That you might need to utilize in other aspects of your life. Listen, have conversations, have intellectual conversations with other people. There's something that can be so stimulating about having a really good intellectual debate. And I know in this day and age, everyone's on their sides and in their corners politically, but there used to be a time where we could come together and debate the merits of an issue and just really feel good at the end of that process. And so I challenge each of you to bring that back. Bring that process back of listening and learning from others, in terms of stimulating that intellectual self-care. And learning is such a valuable endeavor. It stimulates our brain. It helps ward off Alzheimer's disease, and other cognitive deterioration as we age and get older. But learning is so critical, and we spend so much of our formative years learning, and then when we become adults, we don't really actively engage in the process of learning. And I'll tell you this, from my undergraduate to my graduate careers, learning is much easier now that I'm an adult. It's a lot of stuff going on, and I have a lot of things going on in my life, but it is so much easier to learn, and I'm so much more appreciative of it now than even I was as a younger person. And so I challenge you all, learn something new. So social self-care, right? And so what's the old adage, divide and conquer? So that is the opposite of self-care, right? When we are isolated and we are alone and we are by ourselves, that is where lack of physical health and even issues with our care can come. And so one of the things we want to do is we want to, either get or remain social, because humans are social creatures. We were born into families. We tend to stay in families, and we do derive some social, really utility out of socialness and being social with other people. So connecting with others, right? Is also critical to that. And the pandemic has really altered that for a lot of people. For some people, they realize I'm just fine being a hermit and I don't need people, maybe. For other people, they were like, oh, I am the most extroverted person on the earth. I need people. I need people now. And so we've started to come to realize how much those connections with other people really feed our souls and really help us to have that total health, right? So think about, who are the people in your circle, and do you have a circle? We need a circle, right? Because again, human beings are societal creatures, and we have families and we have friends and we are social. Even if there's a range to that, but most of us really do like to be social. So what can that look like, right? Connect with other people. That is really important. Many studies will show when you're around other people, typically moods are boosted, especially if they're friends or family or people that you get along with. So it's really, really important that we do have and maintain those connections with people who love us and who we love. The other part is we sometimes need to disconnect. We need to disconnect from the phones and the electronics and the what we call doom scrolling, where it's just scroll, 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 right? And so if we take some of that time that we're connected with our phones or our computers or those types of things and spend that being social, we'll find that our overall health and wellness will typically increase. So be social, get out there, find your tribe, find people that are like-minded or even not so like-minded, so you can be social self-care and intellectual self-care at the same time, right? But it's so important that we do connect and be social and get out there with other people. We also need to be aware, right, of when we need these social connections and maybe when they're too much or when they're too little, but being aware of what that looks like for us and what cadence we need to engage in that in. The other thing we need to do is review, right? Review some of those social connections. Are some of those people, right, or places that we're connected with, are they serving us, right? Is there reciprocity there? Is there an equality, right, between what you're giving and what you're getting? A lot of us, especially as women, are nurturers and caregivers, and we get into these relationships where it's like we get sucked dry and we have nothing else to give anyone, including ourselves. And so it's important with your social connections, right, that there's a reciprocity to them, that they're even, there's a give and a take, because we are all so likely to just give, 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 give until there's nothing left. So the spiritual self-care is something that is so, so, so important. We are human beings, right? And there's not many things that, separate us, right, from kind of all other creatures on this earth. But we have an intellect, we have a self-awareness, and most of us have some type of connection either within ourselves or outside of ourselves to spirituality. Spirituality can give us reassurance that no matter what is going on in the world, that things can be okay. And we all need that sometimes. I think after the last, 3 years, the last 50 years, the last 400 years, we all need some type of assurance that things are okay and that they'll get better. Spirituality can also give us a purpose, right? It can give us something to focus in on and work towards that not only helps us, but that helps the wider community. And so that's something that's also very, very, very important. It can also help us have an understanding, right? When the world is crazy, how do I make sense of this? How do I understand how all of these things are working in the world to further the world or further humanity and humankind? And how do I make sense of the really horrific things that human beings do to one another? And so sometimes finding religion or spirituality, wherever you are, can help you understand what's going on around us and how to manage that. It also can give us a connection with other people. Some people, get corporately together to exercise their spirituality, and that's something that's important as well. And so again, we see how some of these concepts really bleed into one another. But there's a social aspect, right? Not only with the people around you, but if you believe in a higher power, a connection with the divine. And so that is also something that can be a really beautiful piece of spiritual self-care. So we kind of know a little bit how to do this. If you ascribe to an organized religion, you can practice that. And again, yes, and it can keep you grounded and it can keep you supported and you can understand sort of life through that lens. A lot of people love to meditate, right? And it's really just letting their mind go and maybe sometimes just focusing on nothing, or maybe sometimes focusing on one thing and being able to really dissect that and turn it over. And really, again, create this understanding, create this purpose for your life. And really just to give you some calm and some sense of why things are the way they are and how things can get better. It also can be a way to connect with yourself. And so, again, understanding who you are and what your purpose is and the things that you would like to do and create and change in this world is so vitally, critically important. So, looking at professional self care. So, this is an area I don't think we think about very often. But engaging in professional self care is vital to maintaining and extending the longevity of your career. First of all, it prevents burnout. And there, as most of you know, burnout is so common. We are all burned out as a society. We're burned out at work. We're burned out at home. We're burned out in the community. And so, at least in this one place, right, if we exercise professional self care, we can actually prevent and stave off that burnout. It also reduces mistakes, right? If you are engaged in professional self care, whatever that may look like, you might gain learning or those types of things that are actually going to prevent you from making mistakes that you might normally make because you don't have good self care in this area. It also can minimize secondary traumatic stress. And this is vitally important for folks who have jobs that work with people who might, talk about trauma or experience trauma. Um, or if you are in a traumatic work environment, right, and needing to figure out a way to care within that. So, professional self care also increases efficiency, job satisfaction, and productivity, right? So it increases the rate and the way that in which you do things, right? So that it's you're doing things at a better rate, at a faster rate, with more, basically, efficiency, right? um but if you feel that you are knowledgeable about your job, if you feel that you are capable and you have all the tools that you need in your job, then you are going to feel more satisfied with it. So other, and then you'll be more productive, right? And so being able to be productive in those environments, um, being able to do your job in those environments and do them at a good pace. So someone in the chat asked, what does professional self-care look like? And so we are going to talk about that right now. So professional self-care, the first thing I tell people, please use your PTO. It's there for a reason, right? Personal time off, whether that's sick time or vacation time. Sometimes we need breaks from our profession as much as we may love it. I am a licensed professional counselor. I deal with trauma and grief on a regular basis. And to be able to continue to do my job, I have to take care of myself. Absolutely have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I have to take care of myself professionally and in all of these other domains, really to be able to do my job. Advocate, right? You can advocate for yourself in the workplace. Now, sometimes we have to be a little stealth the way we advocate for ourselves, and we all know that. But if you learn how to appropriately advocate for yourself, for your job, for your colleagues, for the people who are under you, and so all of those things will help to prevent, right, things like burnout, things like job dissatisfaction, job jumping, and all of those other things. The other thing is create a plan, right? What does professional self care look like for you? Is it attending professional development events? Is it learning more about your job or your career? Is it getting an advanced degree? So it can look like a lot of different things, but it depends on what you want to do and where you want to go in your profession. It could be training for a whole new job because this one isn't serving you any longer, right? So you want to create a plan that is sustainable and that you can stick with. It has to either do with your current profession and maybe gaining more knowledge or more insight or more training, or maybe even pivoting to something else because you're like, this ain't it for me anymore. So looking at all of that and seeing where you are with those things and creating that plan for self-care in the professional environment. Okay. So the last thing is connect with colleagues. We have fountains of information right at our fingertips, and that's each other. So we can ask, what would you do in this situation, right? What do you do to exercise and self-care? How did you climb up the corporate ladder, right? How did you, get this advanced degree or any of those types of things? So our colleagues can be some of our best resources for professional self-care, because maybe they've done it or are engaged in it or have different ideas about how to go about engaging in that professional self-care. So all of those things are super important. And I really can't stress this enough because, most of us have to work. We don't really have an option. And so if we can take care of ourselves in this professional sense, our longevity in our careers and our happiness and our job satisfaction will be so much greater. So, financial self-care. So this is also one of those really interesting ones because, again, just like most of us have to work, most of us have to have money and bring in an income. I went to the grocery store early this morning before this storm was going to hit, and walked out with a few bags and spent a whole lot of money. So money is a necessary evil, right? And so the APA does studies frequently, and they saw that in their last study within the last month, over almost 3/4 of people stressed about finances, about their money within the last month. And that's a lot. It is a constant worry and a constant struggle for a lot of us out here, depending on what your financial situation is. If you're one income or two, if you're maybe recently separated or divorced, if you have children to take care of or grandchildren to take care of, that can be really difficult. And so one of the things that we tend to do as human beings is when something gets hard, we're like, oh, I'm going to look over here. And I'm not going to look at that thing over there that's like about to come at me, right? And so we know, though, that avoidance, right, of looking at your finances and making sense of them and managing them appropriately can lead to increased stress. And so what we don't want to do is lead to anything that's going to decrease our self-care in that area. And so it's really, really important to take care of your finances. So how do we do that? Okay, first we need to review. You need to know what it looks like. Okay, you can't manage or plan for something if you don't know what it is and what the nuts and bolts of it, and really take an honest look at what's going on. Because a lot of times, again, if there's a lack of self-care in one area, there most likely is a lack of self-care in other areas as well. And again, we have to spend money, right? We have bills to pay. And so it's so important that you really understand what the state of your finances are. I went to the TIAA-CREF financial retirement planning seminar this morning, and it was great. And I learned a few new things, but it is all about that reviewing and knowing what's coming in and what's going out. But also with that, creating a plan. It's great to have knowledge, but what are you going to do with it? Right. And so creating a plan to sustain yourself financially, both now and in the future. Right. All of us probably at some point maybe want to retire, or at least semi-retire, but at least maybe even have some fun if we don't retire. And if we don't have a plan for that, if we don't have a plan for our current finances and a plan for our future finances, we can't have fun. And I like to have fun. I like to go on a beach every once in a while, or go up into the mountains, or even in the desert sometimes. But I like to go places. If I don't have a plan, I can't do any of that. So save, right? You got to have some savings, you know. And so you have to save. It really is important. Even if you spend it all before you leave, that's fine, because that's your money. You can do whatever you want with it. But you need to save for emergencies, because emergencies lead to stress, and stress leads to the lack of self-care. So save. But it's also important to spend, right? Within reason. But we make money to spend it, right? And so many people just hoard and take, and I'm not gonna do anything with this, right? And if you don't spend, right, all of these wonderful things, you're only doing part of your job. So take a little bit and put that aside for your savings, I mean, for your spending. And so whether that's, I like to read, so whether that's a whole bunch of books, or whether that is, a trip, or some newfangled gadget that you want, all of those things are okay, because as long as you're managing those things and making sure that they are appropriately spent, and so you have some for now and some for later, please spend your money, right? Don't hoard it for later, because we never know when later is going to come. So don't hoard it all, save some, spend some. It's super important, and it'll make you feel good too. So, environmental self-care. So we have definitely become much more interested in our environment lately, and I would say probably really in the last 50 years, with conservation efforts and all of those different types of things, because this is, we only have one planet. We have not made it to the other ones yet, or the other galaxies, to know if there's any other planets like this one. So we need to take care of our environment. So environmental self-care are ways to interact between yourself and your environments to make sure both are better places. And so you want to leave things, right, better than the way you found them, whether it's yourself or wherever you are. And so looking at the community, what ways can you make your environment in your community a better place? Whether that's the giving of your time, your talents, or your finances, right? Doing volunteer work in the community, helping the things in your environment, whether that's just cleanup, helping, maybe people who are unhoused, any of these types of things, right? Helping you to better your community, because you will feel better about yourself. Nature, right? I love nature. I'm originally from the West Coast. I was a beach bum year round. You can ask my mom, who might be on here today. But it is such an awesome place to be and place to experience. And wherever that nature is for you, experience it, right? Make that environment a better place for you, a better place for the people that come after you. You will feel good about that. And that is the way you can engage in that environmental self-care. Also, what does your personal space look like? I tend to have a messy desk because it's where I find things, right? But I have to work really hard to make sure that my personal space is welcoming and conducive for the work that I do, right? And so if I either can't find things, or there's so many things that it's just all over the place, or if I have too many clothes in my closet, or if I have, too many gadgets on my kitchen counter, all of those things can not be great for my personal environment. And so how do I curate, right? How do I like, keep those things that are continuing to serve me and maybe get rid of those things that are not? And so all of that is really important for us to really understand and realize and to connect with in terms of our environment. So our last dimension that we're going to talk about today of self-care is emotional self-care. And this is probably the one that most people, are most familiar with and know the most about. It is, how do we take care of our mind and our emotions? How do we make sure that we're okay inside, right? Because what we do on the outside shows, on the inside shows on the outside. So a lack of self-care in this area can cause increased harm. I mean, a lack of self-care in other areas can cause a lack of more harm in this area. So if we're physically not okay, because maybe we're sick or something like that, that can cause an increase in mental stress. And it can cause increase in depression. We know people with chronic illnesses tend to suffer from depression and anxiety at higher rates than the general population. And a lot of Americans have physical health issues, right? Or how we feel on the inside, right, can also affect other areas. So if we're not having the best day, that may carry over into our professional life, right? Or our social life. And so all of these areas of self-care are interconnected. They're not separate. We are a holistic being, right? And all of ourself are integrated. And so if we don't take care of one part well, it will show up in other parts. So that's super, super, super important to remember. So how do we take care of our emotional self-care? Practice gratitude. We are very fortunate to be here in this society, in this day, to be able to do this even via Zoom, right? For those who are near and far. And so there's so many things in our life, even when things are really terrible, right, to be grateful for and things to look forward to in life. We also have to practice forgiveness. And that is not, it's not a suggestion. When we don't forgive people, and that can include ourselves, we're just swallowing our own poison. There are so many people out in the world that probably have harmed us. And so we can decide to ruminate on those things. We can walk in unforgiveness. We can focus on that. Or we can say, no matter how you are, whether or not you've apologized, I'm going to forgive and move on with my life. And so many of us get stuck in this place where we don't forgive other people or we don't forgive ourselves for the mistakes that we made because we're human, right? Each and every one of us is a human being with faults and flaws and a history and trauma. And so one of the things we have to remember is we have to forgive. It's bad for your face. It's bad for everything, right? Causes wrinkles and all the other fun stuff. So the other thing we need to do, right, is set boundaries. How do we set boundaries so that we don't have to maybe practice as much forgiveness in other people, right? Because we've set appropriate boundaries and people can't invade us or ask us for things. And we have this fear of saying no, or this fear of standing up for ourselves, right? How do we set appropriate boundaries so that other people know, no, this is okay, but this is not? And stand by that. I love that. Yes, no is a complete sentence, no explanation required. And it took me a long time to learn that, right? Even as a therapist, it took me a long time to learn that. But there's such liberation in being able to set boundaries and saying no. It is an important part of healthy human development and emotional self-care. Listen to your whole gut. We are intuitive people, right? We know some says, I don't walk down that alley. That's not a place to go. Or you know what? Maybe you really shouldn't connect with this person because you just get a bad vibe about them. Or you know what? I know you really want that job, but that's not the job for you. There's something else coming over there. So in all of these things, right? We have to listen to our gut. So many of us for our lives have been invalidated. The world has invalidated us. Our education system has invalidated us. Sometimes our families have invalidated us. And we have to overcome all of that and understand that we have a good gut and our gut is correct. And so following that intuitive nature that we have is so critically important because it will save you a lot of grief down the line. And it may be hard at first. It may be like, is it me or is that just what I want it to be? But listen deep, listen intently. So seek support, right? It could be family, could be friends, right? It could be a mental health professional, but seek support. I always tell my clients therapy is the gift you give yourself. Engage in it, right? Engage in the understanding and knowledge of yourself, of that self exploration, right? You know, if you have healthcare insurance, most healthcare insurances will pay for therapy. Find a good therapist. Even if you don't really have that much to talk to, you never know. But even if it's just someone to bounce ideas off of, it's a third party that doesn't have any skin in the game. Seek out support and seek out help as needed, especially if your emotional self-care is low, especially if you're dealing with any type of anxiousness or depressive symptoms or things like that. There is no shame in that. You know, we all, doctors see doctors, therapists see therapists because we all need help in this domain. I love this quote. I love Audre Lorde. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. We have to take care of ourselves. There's no, it's just important, right? It is just an important thing to do and to be able to engage in that self-care process, right? We have to care for ourselves, all of the old, you can't pour from an empty cup, you got to put your own mask on, but helping others. All of that is true, right? If we are not we don't care for ourselves, if we are not holistic in this process, we will not be preserved. And then we cannot go forth and do the things as women that we are created and designed and destined to do. We are so powerful and we don't even realize it. But all of that is because we are spread in so many different directions and we're spread so thin and that we don't engage in these different aspects of self-care. And so it's so important that we understand, even if it was self-indulgence, it's okay too. It's not though. It is self-preservation. And if you don't engage in self-care, you can't be there for yourself and you definitely can't be there for others. And the things that you were meant to do in this world and the places that you were meant to walk in, you will never be able to walk through those doors if you don't take care of you. And if you walk through the doors and you don't continue self-care, you won't sustain yourself in those places. So we have one question in the Q&A I haven't got to. I'm going to get to that one first. And other folks, feel free to add questions to the chat. So Rula asked, how can you say no and not feel guilty about it? Practice. You have to practice saying no. You will feel guilty about saying no sometimes. That's normal and it's natural because we as human beings, and I think especially we as women, we love to help. We love to be nurturing. We want to look good in the eyes of others. We want to take that next step, right? And put ourselves out there so that we can, get to that next step, whether it's corporate life, work life, whatever. But the practice and the art of saying no, right, in and of itself will feed itself to lessen that guilt, right? You have to understand your time is just as valuable as anyone else's. Your expertise is just as valuable as anyone else's. And so again, whether it's intellectual, professional, environment, whatever type of self-care you engage in has to be of service, not only to you, but then you can be a service to others. And there are certain things you just can't do. You may not have the time, you may not have the talent, you may not have the desire, and that's okay. It's okay to not have the desire to do things at certain times in your life because it just doesn't fit your agenda at that time. So, how do you stop feeling guilty? You practice it. And every time you do it, it gets a little better and you feel a little less guilty. So, someone asked, how do you manage self care and all the other responsibilities without getting overwhelmed? Because it feels like another thing on the to-do list. It does. And so one of the things I encourage people to do is it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to take the whole day, right? Even if you take 4 or 5 minutes just at one time or throughout the day to focus on one aspect of wellness, right? You don't have to do all of these all at once. There are ideas of ways that you can exercise self-care in different parts of your life. Some people don't need professional self-care because they're really great at this moment in their career and things are going great. Some people are physically healthy and they have a really good, sort of self-care plan, but maybe this other area isn't so great. So what we have to do is prioritize like we do everything else in life. But again, self-care doesn't have to be a 2-week long, you know, vacation to Bora Bora, although that would be very nice. Okay. It can be something as, 5 minutes of relaxing, reading a good book, talking to a friend, having these check-ins, right? So it doesn't have to be big. It just has to be consistent and something that feeds you. So another person asked, how do you get yourself motivated to do the things you know you need to do, right? Whether it's taking time for yourself, getting up in the morning to go to the gym, which means going to bed earlier, leaving the family up without feeling guilty, right? So I love this word guilt. And let's talk about that for just briefly. Guilty means you did something wrong. I want you to sit with that for a second. Right? If you think about in a court of law, guilt versus innocence, guilt means that you engaged in some type of illegal or immoral activity. So I want you to all think about how caring for yourself is an illegal or immoral activity. It is the care and preservation of you that continues to make the society go around. So if you need to go to bed a little bit earlier one night and, let your family go, or, because you want to get up and go in the morning to the gym, that's okay. Because the increased physical and mental health that you're going to experience is going to offset the half hour or hour outside of their presence, because you're going to be a better family member after you take care of yourself. So these are super important to really actively engage in as a woman and as a human on this earth. And so again, guilt is when you do something wrong, illegal, or immoral. And caring for yourself is never that. Another question posed is, do you have suggestions about making friends as an adult, right? Working kids take over lives. Absolutely. I understand that. So one of the things is, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do? What things move you? And so a lot of times people find affinity groups based on that, right? So if you like join a book club, or you join a hiking club, or you join a running club or something, or knitting club, if you like to do those types of things. So when you get together with people who have similar interests, sometimes you can find your people in your tribe. Sometimes you end up being kids with your friends' parent, the parents of your friends' kids, right? If you have children, or if you have dogs and there's a dog park and you start meeting people with, cute dogs too. So there are lots of things and ways that you can actually go out and meet people. Because it is, I think, harder to meet people as an adult. We're not like those little kids to be like, "Hi, my name is LaNeisha. How are you?" We don't do that anymore as adults. Most of us, some of us. But it's so important that find people who have similar interests. And so again, part of that is engaging in that social self-care. That might take place in physical self-care or intellectual self-care. But go out and find people with like-minded interests and feelings, and you will start to find your people in your tribe. Were there any other questions before I move on to my last little piece of this? Because I want to make sure we all get our time and can get out at the top of the hour. So I'm going to go on. If there are any other questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. And if I have time, I will definitely get back to them. So I would love everyone in this moment to engage with me in a really short guided meditation. And I love these because they are a time to relax. They are a time to just take stock. And they're a time to just be in the present moment. So what I would like everyone to do as they feel comfortable is get into a relaxed position, whether that's sitting, lying on the floor, wherever you are. And feel free either to close your eyes if you're comfortable where you are, or soften your gaze. And we're going to go into just a very quick guided meditation. So I'd like all of you to breathe in through your nose. And I want you to inhale very deeply and then exhale slowly through your mouth. So we're going to take this time today to walk through feeling each part of our body and our systems. So many times we don't really feel ourselves going through the day. We just do. And then at the end of the day, we're sore and don't understand why, and tense. And so I want to take this moment to just relax, continue to breathe, and to feel every aspect of our being. I want you to focus on your feet. And I want you, as you can, tighten them and then relax your feet and your toes. And I want you to roll your ankles slowly in one direction and then slowly in the other direction, feeling each muscle, the sinews of your feet, and how they feel and are experienced right now. Next, I want you to bring awareness to your calves and your lower legs. And I want you to flex your feet and then slowly let that go and relax. Tighten your thighs, tense them up, and relax while you continue to breathe. Next, I want you to, if you're able to, place your hands on your stomach. And I want you to take an inhale through your nose and let your stomach expand. And then slowly exhale and have your stomach contract. Next, I want you to take your hands and I want you to clench them in a fist. Squeeze as tight as you can and slowly let them go. Next, bring attention to your arms and your biceps. And squeeze them as tight as you can and then slowly let them go. Next, I want you to bring your shoulders up to your ears while you're breathing in and slowly release and relax. Now bring attention to your face, and whether your eyes are opened or closed, I want you to scrunch up your face as tight as you can and let it go. Take one more deep breath in through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth. And as we open our eyes and come back into the room, I want you to think about how you feel, how your body feels, how your mind feels. So there are lots of references here for your viewing pleasure. And I just thank you for taking the time with me today to share something that is really near and dear to my heart, which is self-care and all of their dimensions. Thank you for sharing this space. Thank you for being present. And I hope that each of you enjoys the rest of this conference. And as you can see, we did that whole little muscle relaxation in 2 minutes. So you can each take 2 minutes of your day to care for yourself. So if there's any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If not, we'll see you in the next sessions. Thank you and take very good care. Oh, and if you need to go, you're dismissed. Thank you, everyone.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, LaNeisha. I have never seen such a thorough approach to thinking about self-care, and I think we all grew from it. Thank you. And we'll see you all at noon. Thanks, everyone.